Hello, my friends. Welcome back to my channel. My name is David, and today we're going to talk to you about the book for this month for the Eclectic Book Club. That's a Book of the Month club that I've been co-running with the wonderful Shelley Swearingen. If you have not checked her channel out, please go do so. It's fantastic. I'm sure you'll agree. And so this month we are reading John Steinbeck, the Acts of King Arthur and his Noble Knights. But before we talk about that, I just want to give some kind of thoughts. Last month we read the Odyssey. The month before that we read the Iliad. And so to bring Homer to a conclusion, a fitting conclusion, Shelley had asked which one you preferred more. And I infinitely preferred the exploration of the Odyssey over the Iliad. And the issues that I had with the Iliad, in terms of the book not having much in the way of footnotes and all of that, was less of an issue in the Odyssey. And the reason I've had some time to think about that, and I think it's because the Odyssey follows primarily the story of one person and his journey home and what he encounters upon arriving home and all of that. And so you need fewer clarifications on what's being referred to, who this person is. You get a deeper sense of that over the course of the 24 books of that. Whereas in the Iliad, you've got a lot of names and places and armies and all kinds of dynamics that are coming in. They might appear briefly and then rarely get a mention again until books later, and then you're like, well, have I seen this guy yet? Who is this? And so the Iliad, one of my biggest critiques at the end was the edition I read, the Robert Fagles translation. It wasn't so much about the readability of the translation itself, but the lack of any extra help for the reader. There's some end notes, but not much. They're not marked throughout the text as you go, so you don't even know they're there unless you are actively looking for them. And it's a text that I think needs those footnotes so that the reader can blissfully ignore them and read without enjoying them. But for those that want to know more, want to know who this is, what's going on, what this means, the implications of the name that's being mentioned here, the foreshadowing that's going on, all of that, footnotes are a tremendous help. And I missed that in the Iliad. But I didn't find myself craving that at all in the Odyssey. In fact, the Odyssey, I had plenty of times where I could have kept reading book after book after book because it was nice and easy to go, especially in the first half when we got to Odysseus and his journey along to get home. I enjoyed that so much, even though they were very episodic in nature and a lot shorter scenes on most of them than I had thought. But as a whole, it was just a wonderful exploration and a journey. But today we're talking about King Arthur, and King Arthur is one of the few literary figures that is near and dear to my heart. There are fewer characters in all of literature that I have been enamored with more than King Arthur. I would not say that I'm an Arthurian scholar by any means. I've not even read all of the main staple of texts, but I've read most of the major ones and have at least a passing familiarity with things that are going on. I don't know them like the back of my hand, so I don't know exactly what we'd be getting when we open up and book one, and here is Merlin, and it's 60 pages, and you don't know what you're getting. and I'm avoiding any spoilers here. I'm not going to talk spoilers. But I found it to be incredibly enjoyable and readable. A lot like the Odyssey, it was very episodic in feel for that first section. You get little snapshots, and then time hill might pass, and we'll be on to something else. And it's kind of jarring in a way, especially to modern reader tendencies, to just have those transitions that you can't even say that they're seamless because there's no indication that anything's really transitioning. So you have nothing, there are no seams to see. But Arthurian writing is very, very episodic. I went and, by comparison, I grabbed my works by Mallory and started looking. And sure enough, the very first book in here is titled Merlin, Under the Tale of King Arthur. I got to thinking, I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. I know the next section I'm going to be reading this weekend is The Knight with Two Swords. And hey, Balin, or The Knight with Two Swords, happens to be the next one. So definitely, we know exactly where Steinbeck went to pull his source material. So what I wanted to do is I just wanted to read a little passage. So this is enjoyable. And there's a lot in here that pulls very directly from here, but is written in a way that it appeals to a far more modern audience. I mean, you look at Mallory here, and you know you can read it. You might want footnotes for some of it to at least give you what the word is that he's trying to use there. It's readable, but it's not easily readable, much like Chaucer. And so there'd be no shame in needing a translation to read something like this, to enjoy it at least on your first pass through. I want to read just a little passage towards the end of Merlin. We have a scene where Arthur has an encounter with a knight, and they get into a bit of a scuffle, and Arthur gets bested, essentially. And the guy goes on his way, and Arthur goes and gets his famous sword from the Lady of the Lake. And then this is kind of afterwards where Merlin and Arthur are talking, and Merlin's asking Arthur his thoughts about the sword, and then the knight comes and passes by again, and Merlin kind of interferes. Then King Arthur looked on the sword and liked it passage well. Then said Merlion, whether like ye better the sword or the scabbard? I like better the sword, said Arthur. Ye are the more unwise, for the scabbard is worth 10 of the sword. For whiles ye have the scabbard upon ye shall lose no blood, but be ye never so sore wounded. Therefore keep ye well the scabbard always with you. So they rode unto Caerleon, and by the way they met with a King Pellinore. But Merlion had done such a craft unto King Pellinore, saw not King Arthur, and so passed by without it only wordis. I marvail, said Arthur, that the knight would not spake. Sir, he saw you not, for had he seen you, ye had not lightly parted. To give you an idea, and that is, I mean, modernized, but pretty much verbatim appears right in here. And I imagine that if I went and just read all of that section, I would find so much more of that. That's not just translated into here, but maybe expanded a little bit by Steinbeck. And Steve Donahue, when he mentioned this, which is what put it on both of mine and Shelley's radar, he said that this was the best thing that John Steinbeck ever wrote. And 60 pages in so far, I'm inclined to agree. I'm not a huge Steinbeck fan. I loathed Grapes of Wrath in high school when I had to read it. I just recently finished East of Eden, and was underwhelmed. I enjoyed it. It wasn't a bad book by any means, but I was expecting it to just knock me and blow me away, knock me aside, and it didn't do that. So I might be firmly in that camp of this. This will be the pinnacle of John Steinbeck's writing. And so what I wanted to talk about here is the meddling Merlin, who is so aptly named for this section of the book. And we have a bunch of stories that are kind of connected, kind of, in some subtle ways. It starts with Uther and his betting of Arthur's mother, and how all of that comes about, and then Arthur getting spirited away when he's born, and coming back and pulling the stone from the sword, and his early years as king, and the turmoil that comes about because of all of that, and the finding of Excalibur, all within that one section, the first 60 pages. And that's a lot of Arthurian lore that is embedded in there. And my question is about the character of Merlin. He is very meddlesome. He is quick to throw down prophecies, to foretell things, to say that, hey, I know how I'm going to die, but there's no use in trying to change that. So he's very much enmeshed in the having a hand in fate, but also being bound by fate. And a lot of Merlin reminded me of what we just saw in the last two books with the Iliad and the Odyssey, where we have a lot of very meddlesome gods who will actively take part to fight on one side or the other in a conflict, to try to sway things in one direction or the other, and where oracles and prophecies have a great weight. And so, in the framework of comparing and contrasting the acts of Merlin versus the gods from the Greek pantheon and the Homer's works, what are your thoughts between the two? Is Merlin maybe a derivative of the Greek mythology? Do you think he's his own kind of character that has an active role, but knows that his time in the spotlight is very, very Gandalf-like? Almost. He's there. He's very active, but he won't always be the one to bail things out. Just try to get your thoughts on what you pictured Merlin as going in, and what you think of Merlin after reading the very first parts of this book and getting to see some of Merlin on the page. And then I guess the other follow-up question would be, is there anything in the beginning of Arthur's life and his reign that surprised you, that you didn't expect, that you hadn't read about, known about before coming across it now? I'd love to know. So thank you for watching, and I hope you are enjoying this book as much as I am, because I'm definitely enjoying it quite a bit.